Dreading your holiday office party because you're an introvert and you hate networking at those kind of things? Well, I've got some ideas for you today. I'm Greg, I'm the Introverted Networker, and this is a bit of a holiday edition. I'm recording this around the holidays at the end of the year, and it's that time of year when lots of companies have their holiday parties, which means usually whether it's during the day or at night, you got to get together. You might have to get dressed up and you've got to go talk to a bunch of people that you maybe work with, or maybe they work at the same company and you've never talked to them before, but you're feeling a lot of anxiety because you don't really love going to these things, but you got to make an appearance. So how do you make the best of it? How do you make the best of showing up to the holiday party and meeting some new people, maybe forming some new professional relationships? What do you do? Look, I'm going to admit, I do not love going to the office holiday parties. And most of it's because, I just don't like going to these big events as is, but I try to make the most of them. And in some situations where maybe you're newer to the company, you don't know a lot of people, you're trying to make some connections, the office Christmas party or the office holiday party is a great way to do that. People are open to talking. Everybody's going. They're expecting they're going to talk with their coworkers. They're expecting to have some food, maybe have a few drinks. Everybody's going to be feeling good. They're going to be very social. Even if you're not really social, again, it can be a good place to kind of meet somebody and, like I said, form that professional relationship. I happen to think that holidays are some of the best times for networking. And I've said this before in some of my newsletters that you should be really focusing on trying to make some connections here at the end of the year during the holidays so that you can go into the next year and really ramp up your networking. And the reason why I think it's a good time of the year is things kind of slow down a little bit. Everybody's cramming for the end of the year, but you get into like the middle of December and most people are packing it in. They've got a little bit more time to have conversations. They're feeling a little bit more festive at the end of the year, where they're kind of lightening up a little bit and they're open for conversations. People are in a grateful and generous mood. People are thinking about the holidays, thinking what it means, and maybe feeling a little more generous with their time. Want to help some people out, and definitely are open to conversations. You can get together and have coffee. You can have phone conversations. I just find that this is a good time of the year to talk to people. I think the other thing is it's a time of the year when people are thinking of people they've lost touch with, and one of those things is if you send out any sort of holiday cards or gifts or things like that, you've got a list of people. Instead of just sending that out, why not take that list and make it an opportunity to connect with some of those people? And look, most of those people are going to be family or friends or things like that, but there might be some people on there who are coworkers or people you've lost touch with. It's always a good time to get back in touch with them. So I think it's a good time in the holidays to try to network. But back to the party piece of this, the holiday party. If you're going to go and you're feeling like, why do I really want to go to this? Think about it this way. There's probably somebody who's either a leader or somebody in another department or somebody who works on another team that you don't really see at work a lot, or maybe you send emails back and forth, but you never really talk. And this is an opportunity to get to know them. Figure out some of those people who you maybe work with again, or get emails from or messages from, but you never really sat down and talked to them, and make it a point to talk to those people. And what I mean by that is not just, the same old work talk, but you're in an environment where people are kind of more like themselves outside of work, and maybe a little more open to talking about themselves and talking about, who they are and what do they do when they're not at work, and where did they grow up, and what are they working on? What are their challenges? Those are all things that people are maybe a little more willing to talk about outside of a formal meeting at work and while they're at the holiday party. So it's a good opportunity. And if you are, I would say, struggling, there's a LinkedIn post I came across recently. Stephen Liu is a person I've connected with on LinkedIn. We've traded messages. We've talked to in real life. He had a post that was all about how to navigate the holiday Christmas party, and I'll share a link to that post. But What he said for introverts specifically is number one, be be sort of patient with yourself, be gracious with yourself. You don't have to shake hands with everybody. Pick one or two people and go maybe talk to them, and then if you need some time on your own to go get something to eat or get something to drink and sit by yourself for a minute to recharge, you can do that too. Or another idea is go with somebody else you work with. If you've got a coworker, plan to go together so that you can be paired up, so you're not just standing there by yourself. Or if you're going with a spouse or a partner or another friend, make sure that you bring that person along and include them. I think doing this as a team is sometimes helpful, because then you don't feel like you have to be the one doing all the talking. I'm fortunate. I have a wife that's quite extroverted. So anytime I take her to one of these parties, she's going to talk to people a ton. People generally feel like I'm a cooler person once they meet my wife, because they're like, well, she's pretty awesome and she hangs out with him, so, he must be good too. But if you don't have that in your life, figure out who else you can go with. And it's kind of like any other networking event. If you kind of plan this out a little in advance, it doesn't have to be so daunting if you really think about it. But what I really want to focus on, other than some of the tips in Steven's post and some of these other things that I said to you about, people are in the mood to network, make a plan for it. What's really important is not just the party, but the follow-up. And what I mean by that is, if you go to the holiday party and you meet somebody at work that you haven't really talked to before, don't just leave it at that. Don't just leave it at, I talked to you at the party and now I'm never going to talk to you at work again, or I'm never going to have a conversation with you because we'll just trade emails. Make it a point to follow up. So the power of any networking event, and office holiday party included, is in the follow-up. Following up is something very few people do. If you follow up with people after an event, after the office holiday party, you're going to stand out and people will remember you and you'll develop better relationships at work. So let's say you do meet somebody who you kind of knew their name. Now you talk to them a little at the party. Set up some time with them after the party in the next couple weeks before the holidays really get here. Or ideally, when you're listening to this, you may have already had your holiday party. You may have already gone. You may have already talked to somebody. If you did, set up some time with that person and follow up and say, hey, it was great to talk to you at the holiday party. Would love to talk a little bit more and learn a little bit more about whatever you guys talked about. Or if you didn't really talk about stuff, be like, hey, we didn't really get to talk much at the holiday party. I would love to set up some time to just kind of talk to you a little bit more about what you're working on and get to know kind of what your team does or what you do in the organization. Would really help me understand how things work around here. So the follow-up is key. And as with any follow-up, you're going to have to be the one that takes the initiative. So you're going to have to reach out and say, hey, we talked at the party, love to talk more. Let's set up some time. I'll send you a calendar invite. The good thing about setting up time and following up with people you work with is you probably have access to their calendar. You have a way to set up a meeting with them, see when they're available. So that makes it a little bit easier. But take the initiative, set that up. This doesn't have to be long. I mean, honestly, I would say 20, 30 minutes, or set it for 15 or 20. It'll probably go 30 minutes. Just make sure you're being respectful of people's time and set that time up. And then when you get in that conversation, do the things you would normally do in a networking conversation, all the things we talk about on this podcast and in the newsletter. Be the person who asks the question. Be curious. Be the one who asks the other person about themselves and then listens. So ask them, hey, tell me a little bit about where you've worked. How did you get here? How did you get into this role? How did you become the person on the team you are? What was the experience? What was the background? What other companies did you work for? Where did you grow up? Where did you go to school? All those kind of things. You're kind of just trying to get to know the person a little bit. And as you ask and you let that person talk, you're going to start to see where the conversation goes. And as it goes, keep asking additional questions to go a little bit deeper. And of course, at some point that person may turn around and say, well, that's, tell me about you. How did you get here? And, be ready to share your story as well. And these stories about who we are and where we come from in the workplace are what connect us to each other. They're how we learn about each other and how we get past the titles and the emails and the Teams messages and the Slack channels. It's how we get to see the other people as human beings. It's how we start to picture them as real humans and not just some name that comes across in the from line of the email. So we start to understand who people are, what their intentions are, what kind of people they are, and that's the foundation of relationships. And as those relationships grow at work, you'll be more in tune with what's going on in the organization. You'll be more connected to the organization. You'll feel more connected. And honestly, more opportunities will come your way if more people know you, because when they're thinking, hey, who can work on this special project? Who can work on this new team? Who can we tap into for this? They're going to think of you because they know you. They hopefully like you because these conversations go well, and they're going to want to work with you. So I'm talking about this from the holiday party perspective, but that's just the beginning. And this is just, like I said, a good time of the year to do this and start to build these relationships. Now, of course, you can do this any time of the year. You don't have to do this during the holidays. You can always reach out to people at work. You can always have these conversations with people to understand, who they are, what they're working on, what they're challenged with. But again, always remember, you're doing this from the position of you want to go into it and give to people. You want to give them information or insights, or if you can help them out at work in any way, or your team can help them out, do that. These are ways to become insanely valuable in your job. And as I said, that creates opportunities for you, and it also makes you feel more a part of the organization. Those are my thoughts on the holiday party. Again, I'm looking at it from the standpoint of the holiday party is the place where you maybe have that initial conversation because people are in the mood for it. But follow all the other rules around networking events. Make a plan, be very conscious of your energy, give yourself some space to breathe. But the number one thing is follow up. Make sure you're following up after that. Don't just let that one conversation kind of trail off and never come back to it, but follow up and use it as a foundation for building more relationships at work so that you can find more opportunities. So give it a shot. If you've already had your party, think of somebody you talk to and follow up and set up time with them. If your party's coming up, I hope you have a good time. Be smart. These parties are always perilous from an HR perspective, but be smart at the party, and then have some great conversations and follow up. I'd love to hear how that goes. I always want to know what you're trying out, what's working, what's not working, what you're struggling with. You can connect with me in the comments here. You can connect with me via the newsletter. Send me an email. Follow me on LinkedIn. Love to hear what's going on. Have a great holiday season. Have a great end of the year, a great new year. Go out there, meet some interesting people. And remember, always be connecting.